Good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, July 21st, 2020. And here are our top stories: ways that employers can monitor employees working from home, and Microsoft replaces some of its journalists with artificial intelligence. Joining me now to discuss this and more is Daniel Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, welcome back to the program. Great to see you this morning.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
So Dan, we talked on Sunday on the podcast about the Twitter hack, and that has an impact on cryptocurrency. And that has me concerned about privacy in a lot of reasons. And we talked about that on the network. This is kind of an interesting take, or interesting story, because we're all working from home. And a lot of us are. There are some manufacturing people and people that have to go into the office, doctors, et cetera. But we're working from home. And how does an employer monitor the work that their employee is doing? It's a whole brave new world. So privacy seems to be important here, but I want to get you to weigh in on this.
Yeah, so Jeff, I think this depends a lot on what you do. If you're a customer service worker who works from 9 to 5, I think it's reasonable for there to be some method of tracking whether you're at your desk during the hours you're supposed to be. We use Upwork. I'm not a giant fan of Upwork, but when I enter my hours in Upwork, usually I enter how many hours I worked, and I enter it as just like 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. because my boss just wants to know how many hours I worked. He's not questioning my output because he can see my output.
Right.
For that particular hourly job, he can see, well, did Dan edit stories and post them to the site? Did he put things into a different queue that I can now read? Did he, work with the writers? And I usually put a little note or two if he ever looked through my diary to see what I was doing. When I appear on Motley Fool Live broadcast, that's hourly as well. I go into Upwork, and again, I won't put the specific hours, but in the note, I'll put, yep, I was on from 1 to 2 and 4 to 5. And by the way, I forgot to record yesterday's hours, so I worked 2 hours yesterday. Here are those. And there's a lot of trust there. Now, if I was a customer service worker, I could be using the Upwork tool that actually tracks your work. What it does is it takes a screenshot every now and then, and it shows what you're doing. Now, occasionally, did you work for 59 and a half minutes and check your Facebook for 30 seconds? Yeah, it can check that. But your employer would likely go, oh, okay, 9 out of 10 screenshots, Dan was doing what he was supposed to do. That's all I want to know. I'm not concerned that he checked the baseball scores, for 10 seconds. Now, this is where it gets a little bit obtrusive, because you sent me a story that talked about sort of a product that pretty much totally tracks your employees and gives them scores based on productivity. It says, Hey, Jeff, your target score is a 70. You're down to a 65. What are you doing? And then the boss calls you and fires you. That to me is absolutely ridiculous. For most work from home jobs, and again, I'm exempting specific jobs that require being tied to a desk. But as a writer, as an editor, as a coder, your output should be what's measured. It's really easy to tell if someone is doing their job. We, as a company, we've been fully work from home since the beginning of March. And one of my colleagues, my counterpart, who on the Soapbox team, doing she does the planning for editorial. She has a toddler at home, and there's no daycare. So her work hours are like 9 o'clock at night to 2 in the morning, 6 in the morning to, it's whenever she can. And what do we gauge her productivity on?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not her boss, but I can see, okay, nothing happened all day. But then when I woke up, there's all this stuff from her and she was clearly working. I think when companies get beyond basic tracking of people,
mm-hmm.
Hey, can you make a log? Can you tell me what you did today? I think it's a very, very slippery slope.
Yeah, it seems very invasive to me. And I think when you pull back and take that 50,000 foot view, it comes down to company culture. And I think you're right. There are different jobs. For example, customer service jobs, if you're in a call center, they already are tracked. They're tracked because they measure those statistics to report back to prospects and clients on what their success rate is in dealing with that. So that aside, the culture of a company, it should not be, in my opinion, you want to have employees that trust you. And yes, there are different levels of employees. There are frontline employees who are new, they're learning the business, et cetera. Maybe they need more guidance. But I think when you put in processes that are very intrusive and invasive, what you wind up having, it almost is like, think of like the East Germany or the KGB or something. It seems not very trustworthy and would send the wrong message from a culture perspective.
Yeah, and a lot of what you want to do as an employer is set realistic goals and deadlines. So if you need me to finish, my 10-article package on the back-to-school shopping season, and we talk about it, and I say, yeah, like finishing it next Wednesday would be a good, reasonable goal. Well, then I should communicate to you, ooh, hey, hit a snafu. That piece of data I need doesn't come out till Thursday. So article number 8 won't come till Thursday. That's reasonable communications back and forth. Or you're my boss and you say to me, hey, that package is due Wednesday, but I really need you to stop and do this for a couple hours. So what would that mean in terms of those other deadlines? It's all a conversation. Look, there have been countless studies that show that people who work from home are more productive, and sometimes more productive to the point of being detrimental, meaning they're literally harming themselves by this sort of, and you know the feeling, Jeff. Work is at home, so I never stop working. If I'm at my computer, I feel guilty if I'm reading something for fun when I could be working more. I actually think employers need to go in the other direction. They need to be monitoring employees for, are you taking enough time for yourself? We shut down 4th of July weekend. We didn't broadcast. Editors weren't in the queues. And it was really a way to say, because especially those of us who are broadcasting daily, take the pressure off of planning these things. You're not letting people down by not working on a holiday weekend. We're not going to operate. It's a needed break, and I think companies need to do that a lot more than they need to go after what their workers are doing.
Yeah, I think you're right. Well, Dan, I want to hold you over. When we come back, we're going to take a look at artificial intelligence being put in place by Microsoft. What does that mean for news organizations, journalists alike? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
The windows on our homes, they protect us and the ones we love, but they do much more. At Renewal by Andersen, making your home more comfortable is at the center of every window we make. It's why we custom build our windows in America and install them in as little as 1 day. It's why we build our frames with exclusive Fibrex composite material that's 2 times stronger than vinyl. It's why our glass helps keep your home warmer in winter, cooler in summer, and quieter all year long. It's why we stand behind every window with a 20-year limited warranty. Why not help lower your energy costs while giving your home and family the best? Call 1-800-835-6525 to schedule a free in-home consultation. Buy one, get one at 40% off with this special offer. Plus, get special financing with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest for 1 full year. Renewal by Andersen, the better way to a better window. Call 1-800-835-6525 now.
Welcome back. We're talking to Dan Klein, Senior Technology and Consumer Products Reporter with The Motley Fool. Dan, thanks for staying with us this morning.
Oh, thanks for keeping me.
So we're going to shift gears from working from home and privacy to artificial intelligence. And Dan, there have been so many people out there who are fearful of losing their job to a robot or a computer, and journalists are among those. And Microsoft, I have been reading, has replaced some or all of its journalists with artificial intelligence. And you have a lot of experience. You worked for Microsoft at one point. I want to get you to weigh in here.
Yeah, so I worked for this exact group, and it was 10 years ago. I was the launch editor for what is now the MSN Money app. At the time, it was the Windows 8 finance app, and back then they had just gotten rid of MSN Money. MSN Money used to be an actual journal. They produced content. They had columnists, they had writers, they had editors. Microsoft decided they didn't want to be in that game. They wanted to partner with people and be curators. And they had curators for the MSN homepage, and they had curators for the app. I was one of the first few people hired to be a curator for the app. And the day I got there, the goal was always to be a small team where mostly AI was doing the picking. So I was doing things like what are the lead stories, and the AI was doing the rest of it. That never happened. My little team of 4 grew to like 30 or 40 people, eventually grew to 50 people. A lot more bosses came into the mix. I was there for about a year. And the entire year, there was always talk about replacing us with some sort of technology. And any test they ever did for it was laughable. So 10 years later, in July, that's what they did. They replaced their contract curators, people who were producers, were doing they were sifting through the news, using their judgment. They were making sure the photos matched the story, that the photos made sense in the cropping for the different devices you might look at it. So they decided that those people could be replaced, but they would keep the bosses, the internal editors, and they would become more the gatekeepers of are there mistakes. And this week, they laid off some of those gatekeepers, the highest level people, and I don't know the extent of it. I've reached out to some friends there. It's not been public who was let go. There are some people still in that team from a project point of view. And if you go to MSN Money, specifically the app, you might be greeted by a lead story that isn't the lead story of the day, that no journalist would consider the most important story of the day. I don't know if this is good or bad, but there used to be a lot of personal finance, Social Security news on that app, and it performed exceptionally well. And that's no place to be found. You might find 5 stories in a row from the same source. That was a no-no rule. You weren't allowed to do that because you're supposed to be a curator. So do I think the AI will get better? Yeah, it'll get better. Do I think the AI will ever be 50% as good as the people were? I don't. And why does that matter? Well, the goal of this is to save money. You're not going to save money when you've taken what was once one of the best news products. My replacement, a gentleman named Brian Joyner, called it an all-star newspaper. There actually used to be something called the all-star newspaper back in the highlight of the heyday of the internet, but it really was. They were partnered with the Boston Globe, with the Motley Fool, with USA Today, with all the New York Times, all Bloomberg, all these amazing news sources, and they could curate an all-star newspaper. It is no longer that. I would argue that it is, as an app, effectively a useless product, and that is going to cost them viewers. Might they get it down? They might. Might they get it better? Yeah, it's probably going to get better. As a journalist, am I worried that this is going to happen other places? It's going to happen in the places that are laying people off anyway. Yeah, it's going to happen at the low-end newspapers that don't value news. Is it going to happen at places like Bloomberg or Motley Fool? No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to add here that the print and journalism world is always under financial pressure. It seems like there's always a drive to automate. From the outside, I don't believe that a computer or robot can write as effectively as a real journalist. I don't think they can, at the end of the day, the artificial intelligence is programmed by a human, right? Humans are imperfect. So right. It's iterative. But I think that you're absolutely right that, if you're having trouble financially, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to shift gears in order to kind of jumpstart and remain profitable. But I think we're ways off from organizations replacing real journalists with a computer.
Yeah, and this is institutional bias. So at Microsoft, you felt as a journalist, you felt the resentment. And I like Microsoft. I own shares of Microsoft. I think Satya Nadella is a brilliant CEO. I just think when you're not a journalist, it's very difficult to appreciate what I'm bringing to the table. So if you look at the subtlety of, okay, the Twitter hack that we talked about earlier, that's a leading story. Well, you have access to 12 different stories on that, from the Wall Street Journal to the New York Times, but you're only allowed to use a certain amount of Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Bloomberg stories a day. Which one are you going to use? Well, last night, if you went to the Microsoft page, the MSN homepage, you saw 4 or 5 versions of that story in like a 10-story technology queue. I know because I looked through that queue looking for stories for you and I to do on the podcast. And you saw multiple stories on that subject from sources where you have a limited story count. They're only allowed to use so many stories a day. A human's not going to make that mistake. He's not going to, use ammunition that he doesn't have to. And I'm not saying the AI won't get better, and this isn't writing, it's curating. But the AI also doesn't see things like, wait, the headline cuts off on certain views of the app. Oh, the way the photo crops. And again, you can improve this, but at Microsoft, that's a company of coders. They're always going to believe that coders can do it better. I never felt, they had to give me the same perks. I mean, I was a contractor, but when I was visiting in the office, I had access to the same communal kitchen that the coders did, that had amazing beverage lineups and a coffee robot and all of that. You palpably felt that the coders didn't think you deserved that access, that you were absolutely replaceable. My boss changed 4 times in a year, and that's because your metrics as a boss weren't journalistic. And obviously all journalists have to balance profitability. When I write stories for The Motley Fool, there's a target number for how many of them have to be profitable. And it's not like I get fired. I would just get someone would work with me to tweak my stories to make them, appeal more to readers. We're all aware of that part of it. Do I think Microsoft sticks with this? I think they probably do this time, but if they see their numbers dramatically go down, they've tried this before and had to reverse course. Again, I said they've wanted to do this for 10 years. They were testing it when I worked there. Some things AIs don't understand. There is the mix of news stories isn't based on percentages or what people are clicking on. There has to be a balance, and that balance, leads people to click the next story. It's an art, not a science, but I would not expect a bunch of coders to understand the concept of art.
Yeah, well, as a curator, and I produce a newsletter every morning for the last 10 years, I take special care to make sure that the stories link together, that there are themes and commonality there. And I agree with you. I don't think that it's possible yet for a computer to see things the way a human does. Dan, always a pleasure chatting with you. Really great stories this week. Take care, and we'll talk to you again later in the week for the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you then.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest or someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, and more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Attention! The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services has officially authorized new benefits that Medicare Advantage plans may include. To get the benefits you deserve, you can call the Medicare Coverage Helpline.
Hi, I'm Joe Namath. If you're on Medicare, this is important information. I called the Medicare Coverage Helpline and they instantly looked up my coverage. In this one simple call, they offered to enroll me in a plan that includes rides to medical appointments, private home aides, doctors and nurses' visits by telephone, and even home-delivered meals. The plan also includes dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage, all at no additional cost.
Don't delay. Call to see if the new benefits are available in your area.
Call the number on your screen now. It's free.
Call 1-800-757-1451. That's 1-800-757-1451.